Well, believe it or not, I think we are live. We are live today with Tim Fox, my draft mate, my teammate, my pal. How long has it been, Tim? That's 1976 till now. I can't even do the math. 40 plus years.
Well, I didn't really like you when you're playing in college, but then you're an okay guy.
Well, at least I didn't go to Michigan or someplace some place like that. Anyway, but today's episode, this is our seventh in the huddle, and we're really glad to be joined by Tim Fox, who's sponsored today by the Sullivan Group, with Pat's alum John Andreoli as president and CEO, covering Patriots alumni with its risk management and insurance needs, while sponsoring our flagship program, Football for You, to the youth and families of the Worcester area at St. John's High School. Tim, did you know, that's in Shrewsbury, by the way, John's been the head coach at St. John's in Shrewsbury. He's coached the Pioneers for 15 years to a record of 128-41 with 5 Division I, 1AA Central Western Mass Super Bowl championships, 2 Division I, 3 Central Western Mass District championships, which earned him state championships appearances in 2013 and 17, and ultimately winning the Division III state championship in 2017. Thank you, the Sullivan Group and John Andreoli. And established in 1898, the Marr Companies has grown into 4 separate businesses through the leadership of 6 generations of family members. Serving the New England area, the company provides wide-ranging products and services to the construction industry. Stalwart Patriot fans, the Marr family has been involved with the team since early days. Daniel F. Marr Sr. was an original investor in the team in 1959, and his 2 sons, Dan Jr. and Bob, were both on the board of the Boston Patriots Football Club, with Bob serving as its president during the 1974 and 75 seasons. As long-time Patriot fans, the Marr Companies applaud the mission of the New England Patriots Alumni Club. Helping to support our area's youth programs is a win-win-win. Go Pats. Thank you, Marr Companies and the Sullivan Group, for sponsoring Tim today. Well, let's see. What should we talk about? Where would we start? How about, you mentioned before we met, actually, as teammates, I went to the University of Colorado, and you were at The Ohio State University. And I don't know that a lot of people can know or understand or appreciate that you are only one of 2 guys that has started in 4 Rose Bowl games. Isn't that true?
I believe it is. I was very fortunate that your freshman year and my freshman year was the first year that freshmen were actually allowed to play at the varsity level. They used to have freshman teams prior to that. And then we still had somewhat of a freshman, or call it a JV team, but we weren't eligible. And, it's the old story, that when Coach Hayes said, "Fox, get in there, all our good players are hurt." They really didn't have much choice. I was like the last guy standing. So, but I did it once I got in, and we had a great 4 years at Ohio State. I think we have the winningest percentage over 4 years of any school in history, and played 4 straight Rose Bowls. I wish we'd have done a little better in those Rose Bowls, but it was a great college experience.
No, I guarantee it was. And you had also the honor of playing with one of the best offensive players in the game, and certainly in that era, as Archie Griffith. And he was the only other 4-year starter in Rose Bowls, as well as I understand. But of course, he won the Heisman Trophy his junior and senior year at Ohio State University, and I got a chance to meet him when we played in the Hula Bowl out in Hawaii that year.
Well, he's just, you can't say enough good things about Archie. Unfortunately, his skill set didn't translate real well into the NFL, and he's a little, somewhat undersized. Although it didn't seem to hamper him much, playing in the Big Ten. But you will never meet a more quality guy, and he's now an associate he was an associate athletic director at Ohio State. Now I believe he runs the the Alumni Association.
Oh.
So he's back to his roots in Columbus.
Oh, that's terrific. It's good that they keep him involved in that too, and probably have to explain who he is to the young athletes that wander through Buckeye Nation, but they don't have to talk very long about it.
Well, he's the only two-time Heisman Trophy in the history of the award, and I think he'll remain so because obviously back then, once as a junior, no one thought about playing in the NFL as a senior. It just wasn't allowed. And now, if you're good enough to win the Heisman as a junior, I don't think you're gonna play another year of collegiate football.
Yeah, they jump. I think the only guy that threatened that record was Tim Tebow. Wasn't he nominated 3 straight years or something, wasn't he?
Right. Yep. And then, but he ended up coming out early too, didn't he? But
yeah.
He was. I think he had his greatest level of success as a sophomore.
Right.
And had to come.
Yeah. No, that's true. That's true. And then our worlds collided in 1976 when Bucko Kilroy decided that he wanted to draft 3 guys. You and I were part of the Jim Plunkett trade, where Plunkett played obviously from 1970 to 75 with the Patriots, and then he got hurt in the 75 season. Steve Grogan stepped in, and it turned into a Brady Bledsoe kind of issue, and they decided to stick, or Chuck Fairbanks decided to stick with Kansas State grad Steve Grogan and put Jim Plunkett on the trade block, and San Francisco picked him up. And for that trade, the Patriots were not awarded, but they traded and gave up their 2 draft picks, San Francisco's 2 draft picks. They picked me with one of them and you in the other, and in 1977 they picked up last week's In the Huddle guest, Raymond Claiborne. So there was 3 as part of that whole deal. But Mike Haynes was our other draft mate. He was the one that was picked with the Patriots pick at 5. So 2 out of 3 defensive backs and a big slow offensive lineman wasn't too bad of a start for all of us.
I think that was a pretty good deal actually for Plunkett. And the interesting thing about Plunkett was he went to San Francisco and had absolutely no success in San Francisco. Was released, and then the Raiders picked him up, and he won the Super Bowl with the Raiders.
Right. He crossed the bridge and got good.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he was fairly maligned when he was up here. He was the first pick of the draft, and he was a Heisman Trophy winner, and it just never quite panned out. I'm not sure that he didn't blame not having an offensive line, and you sit and see the offensive line that he had. They were pretty good, but anyway, it worked out, I think, well for both teams. Well, not for San Francisco, but certainly for Jim Plunkett and for the Patriots.
Well, I think if San Francisco had just held on to their picks, taken you and me, they probably would have been very successful.
Yeah, it didn't take them long to get successful without us, Tim. Just saying. Was it 1980 or 81 or something that they started out their dynasty? Bill Walsh.
Yeah, well, we could have been part of that.
Yeah, we could have. Oh, well. Yeah, life would have been way different with us, in Palo Alto or wherever the heck they were playing, right? San Francisco.
That is for sure. I had an opportunity to spend a couple of years with the Rams in California, and it's certainly a different environment than what I was used to back here in New England.
No question, especially in Canton, Ohio too. You'd have been in I bet you were in total culture shock, but not really. You're kind of a worldly guy.
Well, the interesting thing about coming from Canton, Ohio is, high school football in Canton is everything. When you open the sports page of the Canton Repository, and Canton's a good-sized city, and right next to Canton is Massillon, and it's one of the biggest football rivalries in the country. But when you open the front page of the sports page in the Canton Repository, it is always high school sports first. The first 2 pages are all high school sports. And then you go to Ohio State, Kent State, covering the collegiate ranks, and then on the back pages they start talking about professional football. So it's pretty amazing. So when I don't know what your experience was, but I can imagine it was similar to mine. In that when I came to the New England Patriots after we were drafted, I remember getting the phone call, and then we come up for our visit to meet the press and to meet the coaching staff and all that. And I remember coming into the airport thinking, boy, this is really going to be cool. And I get picked up by a guy, and he's driving a Volkswagen Beetle with one front seat. And, I'm thinking they're going to, I'm a number one pick. They're going to send a limousine for me. No, it's a guy in a Volkswagen. And I asked him, I said, why do you only have one front seat? He goes, well, I only need one. Okay. He proceeds to bring me to Foxborough. And again, I'm coming out of Ohio State. I played, my high school football in Canton, Ohio, which is, big time football. They bring me up Route 1. I go by this stadium that looks like a high school stadium, frankly. And, 2 blocks down the road, they take me to the Red Fox Motel. And that's where I stayed for my first trip to New England. And it was not particularly what I had expected, to be honest with you.
Well, I think I was on that same trip, maybe. I know that I did very similar. My impressions were very similar. I don't think they picked me up with a one-seated Volkswagen Bug, but we all stayed at the Red Fox, and then we had a return trip during minicamp. Remember, we all stayed at the Red Fox for minicamp too.
Yeah, I remember it well. Unfortunately, that was the minicamp I broke my wrist in. As a rookie, so that was the end of my mini camp, but worked out all right.
Yeah, no question, it did work out. You got here, you and Mike Haynes in the same secondary. He was so effortless, I should say. When you saw Michael return punts or kickoffs or just plain run, he was so smooth and just a really terrific athlete. You were the hammer back there. I mean, you lined up people and drew a beat on them, and if they were in the middle of the field, they were going to meet Tim Fox some way or another. And I remember that you were in the era of that free safety movement with like Fensick and Plank and those kind of guys would just light up people in the middle. And, Rodney Harrison was that type of player when he was here with the Patriots. But we had a secondary that eventually, I think while you were still here, everybody in the secondary were first-round draft picks because Claybo came in the next year.
We had 5 number 1 draft picks in our secondary. And that was before the nickel defense. So we had 5 number 1s, and we only played 4 of them. So I don't know how much sense that made, but every year we'd come to the draft, and I'm going, what? They don't like us? They don't think we're good enough? We played pretty darn well, and it got to the point, when push came to shove, and when unfortunately the Sullivans, didn't have the money that the Crafts have, and frankly the structure wasn't like it is today with revenue sharing and everything else. So, with us, as soon as you got to the point that you were recognized as being a pretty good player, and you wanted to be recognized as a good player by a paycheck, the Sullivans weren't able to keep up with that, and so one by one, a lot of the number 1 draft picks ended up going someplace else because the Patriots just didn't feel like they had the ability to pay them.
Which is an awful shame, because you take a look at what they had built, what Chuck Fairbanks and Bucko and whoever else was involved built up over the years. You go back to the '73 draft with John Hanna, Sam Cunningham, and Darryl Stingley, right? You took the '76 draft with the 3 of us going, and the '77 draft they get not only Raymond Claiborne, but they get Stanley Morgan ahead of him. And then they sprinkle in enough veteran presence that we were going to be okay. Like Bobby Howard in the secondary. I'm sure you guys leaned on him a little bit for experience. Bob McKay on the offensive line. Steve Zabel as a linebacker. Just enough of that veteran presence. George Webster, for instance, I remember him on the defensive side of the football. An old grizzled veteran. I think he was in his 10th or 11th year. Tommy Neville was in his 12th year when we came on as rookies. We had a good thing going. That '76 team, I'm telling you, we we beat Oakland in Foxborough for their only loss of the season. We beat them 48-17, and then the Ben Dreith move when we're out there in the playoff game. Or I contend that's our first Super Bowl victory.
Yeah, in my 12 years on teams, I honestly believe that our rookie year was the best team I was ever on. Certainly, as you were describing, it had a lot to do with, Chuck Fairbanks had put together a really good coaching staff.
Right.
I think of guys that, he could take a step back. Chuck was kind of a hands-off head coach. He wasn't doing a lot of individual coaching of players, but he was the coach of the coaches. And then we had such a good mix of veteran players, and then we had such a strong, rookie class or young class of players that it was a great blend of youth and experience. And, I think to a certain extent the younger players didn't know any better. I mean, we just thought this is the way it's supposed to be.
Right.
We'd all come from winning programs. So, hey, we were winning and we thought that's what we were supposed to do.
Right. No question. And then we come to, and you started to make mention of it, but that 1982, I call it the Patriot Purge. We went from being really, really good. Chuck Fairbanks decides that, if he can't make the decisions based on what he thought was the needs, he was leaving. So he packs up and goes, and after that 78 season, fired him 3 hours before the Miami game, the last game of the season. We'd already won the AFC East, and anyway, what a mess that was. And
how about that? That game was the biggest fiasco of all time. After, when we got into the, when they fired him the last game of the season.
Right.
So we had dual head coaches, and Ron Earhart and Hank Bullock. Hank was the defensive coordinator, and Ron Earhart was the offensive coordinator. And so they knew they were both kind of going to be considered for the head coaching job. So I to this day, I remember the pregame in that locker room where they had dueling pregame speaches, and each one of them tried to outdo the other one of them.
It was like last week's presidential debate.
Exactly. But got all fired up, and we're in Miami, and we go to leave the locker room, and remember that was just a horrible locker room in the old Orange Bowl.
Right.
And there was an old metal door that they used to open and close to come in the locker room. Well, the door was closed, obviously, but there was an old-fashioned padlock and lever. Somebody had come by and and padlocked us in the locker room, and we couldn't get out of the damn locker room.
We were all charged up, ready to fly out, though.
Man, we almost broke the door down. But times have changed quite a bit since then.
Well, no question, but that was just kind of the beginning of the end. We described that, we were fairly packed with good talent, both young and old, and then Chuck left. It wasn't a bad handoff because Ron Earhart became the head football coach, and we all thought the world of Fargo. I mean, I thought from an offensive point of view, he was always terrific, but it certainly wasn't the same as it was going to be, and that didn't last very long either. And then I'm telling you, in 1982, we lose Mike Haynes, Sam Cunningham, Tim Fox, Andy Johnson. I'm leaving guys out. Donnie Hasselbeck, Russ Francis. Huh?
Russ, I went in 81.
Well, yep. Oh, 81, okay.
Yeah, so it was a mass exodus, and again, it just came down to it was dollars and cents.
Yeah.
And the Sullivans frankly could not afford to operate that team in a competitive nature, and they did what they had to do, and unfortunately, the fans of New England paid the price.
Yeah. Yeah, that was tough. And then, the guys that were left behind looked around and said, "Why did they keep us?" It was just.
And it didn't help matters that they brought in Ranger Ron Meyer from college that had never had any idea what was going on at the pro ranks, and he was quite a piece of work.
Yeah. He did bring in a couple of good coaches, though. Dante Scarnecchia came in with that staff. Believe it or not, I mean, we're talking history, and Dante just retired last year, and he's been around the Patriots organization for longer than anybody. And Steve Sidwell was a defensive coordinator. He went on to do defensive coordinator in Seattle and that kind of stuff. So I mean, he had some pretty good coaches around him, but man, that was just a fiasco, quite honestly.
Well, I remember I was trying to negotiate a contract at that time, and then they fired Ron, and they Ron Earhart.
Right.
They brought in Ron, and I think we had a mini camp or something, and I didn't go to the mini camp because I didn't have a contract. And I met with the offensive or the defensive backfield coach. I can't remember what the guy's name was, but here we had 5 number 1 draft picks invested in the defensive backfield, and he brought in a defensive backfield coach that I believe was like 26 or 27 years old.
Steve Wallace.
Never played. Who was it?
I think it was Steve Wallace. No.
Had never played in the NFL. Had never coached in the NFL. Had been nothing but an assistant coach in college. So we have 5 number 1 draft picks, 4 of which are older than this guy they brought in with more experience than this guy was going to coach us. And I started complaining about that to Ron Meyer, and that was kind of the that was the broke the camel's back, I believe.
They didn't want you that bad, huh?
No, well, he didn't like me criticizing his coach, but I mean, the reality was the guy was over his head, based on the talent he had in the secondary and the experience he had in the secondary. This guy wasn't going to help us with anything.
Or be smart enough to know that and just make sure he had a bag of balls he could throw at you every once in a while.
Right.
Get out of the way. So you leave the Patriots, you go to Los Angeles, or did you go to San Diego first?
Went to San Diego first. That was they ended up, when it became apparent that things weren't going to work with us and they weren't going to pay me, and Ron Meyer wasn't real happy with those comments I made with him. My original defensive backfield coach was a gentleman by the name of Larry Weaver, and he had actually become the offensive coordinator for the Chargers. And he and I got along great. We were only together 1 year, but he was an excellent coach, and obviously he thought a lot of me. So they made the trade for me on draft day before the 82 season. And I think I went for the Chargers traded the first pick in the second round and the first pick in the third round for me. And so there was a pretty substantial investment from the Chargers' point of view, and I was happy, because I had already enrolled in law school and was going to night school. And basically I said, look, all right, if you guys don't want to pay me, I'll just finish going to law school, and I guess I'll go be a lawyer. and not sure I really wanted to do that, but obviously the Patriots believed me, and so they made the trade.
How long did you play at San Diego? 3
So
years?
I was in San Diego 3 years, and we had some really good teams in San Diego. I unfortunately had some injury issues when I was there. Played the first year was the 82 strike, so we only played 9 games, and had a very good year in 82. Actually, made the All-Pro team, and everybody was happy. And then in like the third game of the second year there, I broke and dislocated my ankle. Kind of very similar to what we saw from Dak Prescott, last week.
Yeah.
And so I ended up undergoing 3 surgeries for that. So I missed the rest of 1982, and actually the beginning of 1983, because the surgeries were 4 to 5 months apart. They just couldn't get it right. And then when I came back in 84, I only played about half of that year because of that injury. But it did come around, and frankly, I thought I played well enough on it, but my contract was up, and for what San Diego deemed they were paying me, they didn't feel like they got their money's worth because they were paying me a lot of money, and unfortunately, because of the injury, I didn't produce what they had hoped to produce, and so kind of the similar story. I knew another coach who was also had been at the Patriots, Lou Erber, was a coach with the Rams, and they made the trade, and so I got traded to the Los Angeles Rams and played 2 more years there.
And somehow, didn't you finish your career like on your way to Cleveland? That was my recollection.
I did. I went. So I had basically retired from the Rams. John Robinson was our coach there, and he was a good guy. I mean, a very good coach. And some guys just know the right way to talk to you and to encourage you. And he basically made a phone call to me at the end of after the season was over, and said, "Look, Tim, I appreciate everything you did for us. You really gave us all we really wanted from you. But you're coming into your 12th year. We've got some very good young talent behind us. And, if I bring you into training camp, you're going to beat these guys out. And they're not going to get a chance to play. And I think they have the opportunity to be really good players. And the only way we're going to find out is when they get a chance to play. So I'd rather not have you come in, kind of know what we got in you. And I know you'll probably keep these guys on the bench." So he basically kind of gave me my choice, and I said, "Okay, coach, that's fine. If that's the way you feel, I'm happy to call it a day." So I basically kind of retired on my own terms. And then Marty Schottenheimer from the Browns had called me later in the year during the offseason. They had a kid that was playing free safety for them that tragically went to I think a bachelor party or something and died of a drug overdose. And they had there were very little at the free safety position. Again, they kind of had a young guy that they thought could play, but they had hired. This is going to sound strange, but he says, Marty tells me, "I want to bring my brother on to the coaching staff, Kurt. But really the only place I can put him is at special teams. And our special teams coach is a guy by the name of Cower. And so I'm going to move Cower to the defensive backfield position coach. He doesn't know a lot about defensive backs, so if you could come in and kind of help him, that would be great. And then, we'll bring these kids along and we'll all get along just great." I said, "Okay, that sounds like a good plan. I like the sounds of that." So Evan, was going along fine through training camp, and unfortunately, then I got hit in the ribs and broke 2 ribs in training camp. and the interesting thing is, life is strange in the NFL. You kind of have to take everything with a grain of salt. But so Marty called me in and said, "Look, here's the plan. We're going to we're going to sit you out the last 2, because back then we were playing 4 preseason games. We're going to sit you out the last 2 preseason games, and if you're better, we're going to we'll put you on the active roster. But it's probably not going to be better. So ideally, what we would do is put you on injury reserve, and then let you heal and be able to bring you back at the 8-week point." I said, "Okay, that's fine by me." But my wife was back here in New England, and Debbie, and she was expecting our 3rd child. And I said, "Look, Coach, if you want to let me go, I understand. I'll go home. We'll call it a day. Nothing ventured, nothing lost, because I wouldn't mind being home when my wife has the baby." And he says, No. This is the plan. We're going to stick with the plan." And so we sat out the last 2 games. You know how it goes after the last preseason game. The knock comes on the door. The guy comes around and says, "Coach wants to see you." And I said, "What's the coach want to see me for? We've already kind of had this discussion." She said, well, Coach wants to see us." So I went in, and first I had to meet with the assistant athletic director, or the assistant GM. who was Ernie Accorsi.
Huh.
Ernie sits me down and says, well, listen, Coach and I had a conversation. We've sat you out the last 2 games of the preseason. We think you're healthy. We're going to let you go.
Wow.
I said, well, didn't we I just had this conversation with Coach, about 2.5 weeks ago. We laid the plans out. He goes, no, those plans have changed. We're going to let you go. I said, well, those plans may have changed, but my injury hasn't. I still have broken ribs. So, unfortunately, the way things were back then with the Players Association is you had to file a grievance. Mm-hmm. I left the facility. I went to the Cleveland Clinic, had my ribs x-rayed, got the x-rays back, and showed 2 broken ribs, and filed a grievance. And 2 years later, literally took 2 years, my grievance was heard, and I won the grievance, and so they ended up having to pay me for half of that season, which is what they could have done right off the bat if they wanted to do it the right way.
Right.
They really wanted to go, but I mean, literally, they could have put me on IR, paid me for half a season, and if I came around, I could have played for them. But
right.
That's the way it is in the NFL. You just kind of
no question.
You're a commodity, and the sooner you understand that, the better off you are.
Well, yeah, I exited the Patriots in a similar fashion. I mean, we don't need to talk about that anyway. This is about you. Huh?
Didn't you have a shoulder?
No, I had a knee. I had a knee, and again, in a very similar fashion. The beginning, during the during the off season, going into my 13th season, Raymond called me into his office, and Raymond Berry called me into his office, and he said, you're going into your 13th season. How are your knees doing? I'd had both of them operated on the year before. No, I went through the whole season the year before without any injury. How are your knees doing? I said, they're doing fine. He said, well, we like your leadership. We want to make sure that you're here. I said, well, if you're gonna eventually cut me, do it now. This was like February or March. Do it now so I have a chance to hook up with another team. No. It's just you keep working hard the way that you're doing, get in shape, and let's see what happens. So I went through the off season, went through training camp. He actually came up to me on the field. We're getting ready to play. We're getting ready to play the last preseason game, and he said, or maybe the second to last preseason game, he said, the kid behind you is not going to get as much of a chance to play. I got to see if he can play. Why don't you line up at one of the tackle positions and see which one you're comfortable at in case we ever have to, put you in. And he said, but make sure it's that which way that you want to go at those tackle positions, because the doctors tell me that if you pull one way because your knee's so bad and you plant wrong, we could lose you for the season. So he said, just feel your way through and make sure it happens. And I said, fine. We played the last preseason game, and he came up to me and he said, well, you made the 8. That was always the mantra when you were on the bubble or something like that as an offensive lineman, because typically teams carry 8 offensive linemen. And so I said, great. And anyway, on Tuesday we're getting ready to play the Jets in the opener, and this was for the 88 season. And I'm downstairs, and they called downstairs, says, Coach wants to see you. So I went upstairs. I was working out. I was getting ready to play the Jets. And went up, sat in Raymond's office, and he said, last night we made a trade for, what was his name? He was the center at Cleveland, went to University of Texas. Matters not. Anyway, we traded for him. I knew he had worse knees than I did. And I'm thinking, why is he telling me about personnel moves like this? He says, and we've decided to release you. I went, you mean from March when I said, if you're going to cut me now, to now, and now you're going to cut me? That was the end of my career. But I had a similar deal in that when they had told me that I had to be careful about what position to play, I said, well, then you should. Oh, he said, we're still concerned about your knee. I said, then should have fixed it right the first time. And I ended up filing a grievance, and 2 years later, I got half of the 88 salary. So anyway, same
Yeah. Well,
ungrateful
you
exit.
learn, unfortunately, everybody kind of learns that lesson the hard way.
Yeah, no
And
question.
coaches have a tough, they have to work within their constrictions too. But you shouldn't say things that you don't think are going to be true.
Right.
And I guess you always know that maybe they'll find someone that they think is better than you. But how did that work out? Did whoever they brought in, did that center, did they keep him on the team?
No, they did for that year. But I mean, he was more. I'm telling you, he was. If I could remember his name, you'd probably say, "Oh yeah, no, I know." Anyway, yeah. Then they had him, and Trevor Maddox was the guy that was behind me. He got in a couple of, he played a little bit also on the whole bit. But anyway, so.
Well, you said about Trevor.
Huh?
You know what they used to say about Trevor?
No.
If they taped an egg to the front of his head, and he played a couple of years, it'd still be there when he left.
Yeah, he wasn't that let's come off the ball screaming kind of deal. Nice kid. He ended up playing a 12-year career, and mostly as a deep snapper, as a specialist. But he ended up, yeah. I see him on college football game day all the time.
I know. I see him a lot. He does a good job.
He really does. So let me get this right. So you grew up in Canton, go to the Ohio State University, which is just down the street a couple hours. Come to the Patriots. Go out to California. How did you end up back in New England? What brought you back all those times to New England? You'd think once you got your release and you got a taste of California and nice warm weather and all that kind of stuff that perhaps you would have moved on. What kept you in New England?
Well, after getting traded to San Diego, I realized that nothing is forever in the NFL. It's what have you done for us lately? And you can't. It's very hard to make long-term plans to do anything. So I enjoyed New England when I was here for those 6 years. I had 2 kids at the time, 2 young girls, and so when we went out to San Diego, I think my oldest Landon was just starting kindergarten, and Haley, my middle child, was in like a play school. Or Landon might have been starting first grade. I think she was in first grade, and Haley was starting kindergarten. And so, it was going to be difficult to get them to move. But by the same token, I didn't like the idea of raising girls in Southern California, to be honest with you. The lifestyle out there was a lot different than what you would experience back here in New England. And so, after the first year, we were thinking maybe we'd bring them out. And then when I got hurt, I'm going, this isn't going to be great. So we ended up just kind of keeping my house back here. I had a great house here in Foxborough that basically overlooked the stadium. And I didn't have trouble renting it during the season because guys were always looking for places to live. I rented it to Andy Johnson for, I think, the first 2 years. And then the last year I rented it to Craig James.
Clayton Wysoon. Didn't you rent it to Clayton Wysoon one year? Doesn't matter. Craig James.
I may have. Yeah, when I was with the Rams.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And so so we would rent a place in California.
The only reason I said that is because Clayton used to throw wild parties at your house. I'm kidding.
No, it doesn't surprise me. I mean, Craig James had 2 dogs that really liked my house. They liked my house better than they did the front or the backyard.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. So we basically did the commute. We would rent a place out in the West Coast, and hopefully, when I was come back year after year, we would try to get a place in a similar school system. So the girls would go to school half a year out there and come back here for the second half of the year.
What are you up to these days?
I am a grandfather of four. So, I worked. I had a long career with a great company, R.R. Donnelly and Sons, which is now Donnelly Financial Corp. And it was a good career for me getting out of football. They allowed me to learn the business, and it was actually much. Of course, football back when we were playing was not a lucrative career.
Right.
So the financial world with Donnelly was far more lucrative for me than football was, which is, you're not going to see that much today. With the money that these guys are making, it's kind of hard to make more money than what you were making playing football. But that worked out very, very well for me. I had 25 years with them, or 25 years in the industry, just over 20 with Donnelly, and so I retired about 2.5 years ago. And so now we still, we had a home in Foxborough when I was playing here. When the girls were growing up, we moved to Westwood, and my son went to Zavarian while we were in Westwood. And then about 10 years ago, we sold the house in Westwood and moved to a nice little spot in Hull, Massachusetts. So we have on a hill overlooking Boston Harbor, Logan Airport, and the city. So we have great sunset views, nice views of the city. So I'm there about half the year, and then the other half of the year we're down living in Marco Island, Florida. And,
not a bad gig.
I know you keep telling me you're going to come down to Marco, but I haven't seen you yet.
Well, we could probably make that work. We got to get out of this weirdness so we can travel a little bit to get down there. But yeah, I would love to take you up on that. No question. I'd like to have you and Deb down there when we show up, though.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, we'll come down. The only thing you'd miss if I'm not there is I wouldn't be able to take you out on the boat. That's all.
Well, then I gotta wait for you to get there. Why go to Florida if you can't go on the boat?
Yeah. And you'd have to be able to show me, how to fish, because I do fish down there, but I'm not a big fan of fishing. I like catching. I don't like fishing.
There's a lot of fishing going on. That's for sure. Well, Tim, I see you're parked in a parking lot somewhere. You're anxious to get going. At least Fido is back there in the back seat. He sure is well behaved.
Yeah, let's see. Hey, Marco, say hi. Say goodbye.
Good boy. What a good boy.
Yeah, he's a good boy. We're up in Norwood I brought my grandson. He participates in this little program for football.
Oh, okay.
They do all indoor drills and stuff, but he has a lot of fun with it.
Well, if he's like his grandfather at all, he's probably already dropping people in there, hitting his own guys.
So he's not showing his best side by not being able to hit people, but he'll come around.
Oh, that's right. Well, Tim, thanks very much for joining us. We're using this as an opportunity to still get good messaging out to the same communities that we service with our Football for You program. Hopefully, we get a lot of these sponsored to take care of some of the production costs that we're incurring. But it sure helps to have my friends and my teammates come on. We're going to go through the 70s era of guys. Next week we have Steve Nelson joining us, and his mentor, Steve Zabel. That ought to be an entertaining in the Huddle episode, to say the least. And then what's that?
There'll be some stories right there.
There's some stories, some that shouldn't be told. We'll see if we can't get them at least on a 20-second delay so we can make that work for everyone. Then I've got Bob McKay coming, and then we've got, who was my mentor. Then Bob McKay's coming, Dirty Bob. And then Tony McGee and Ray Hamilton are going. Oh, we've got Russ Francis as well. So those are coming up for the 70s. What's that?
The Big Kahuna.
The Big Kahuna. He's tough to track down sometimes. He's gone from Hampton Beach to Montana to Hawaii to Wyoming, and now he's down in Connecticut somewhere. So we're going to have him on board. But it's really fun just staying connected with everybody. Yesterday I was on the phone for over an hour with Ron Wooten, getting the guys lined up from the 80s, and it's fun getting all reconnected with that. So anyway, I hope our viewers can join us. Again, special thanks to Tim for joining us, and really great thank yous to our sponsors. The Sullivan Group, with Pat's alum John Andreoli as president and CEO, covering Patriots alumni with its risk management and insurance needs, while sponsoring our flagship program, Football for You, to the youth and families of the Worcester area. At St. John's High School in Shrewsbury, where John has coached the Pioneers for 15 years to a record of 128-41. All kinds of division championships, couple of Super Bowl championships, but the culmination was in 2017. He and the Pioneers won the Division III state championship, played in Foxborough. And the Marr Companies, established in 1998, they've grown into 4 separate businesses through leadership of 6 generations of family members serving the New England area. The company provides wide-ranging products and services to the construction industry. Stalwart Patriot fans, the Marr family has been involved with the team since the early days. Daniel F. Marr Sr. was an original investor of the team in 1959, and his 2 sons, Dan Jr. and Bob, were both served on the board of the Boston Patriots Football Club, with Bob serving as president during the 1974 and 75 season. As longtime Patriot fans, the Marr Companies applaud the mission of the New England Patriots Alumni Club. Helping to support our area's youth programs is a win-win-win. Go Pats. Anyway, Tim, I'll bid you adieu.
I'll tell you what, I could not be sponsored by 2 better groups, because Andreoli, who'd have ever thought Andreoli could be as successful as he is today?
No question.
That is so, but he's a great guy. And the Marrs are the most generous. It's one of the most generous families in New England, and they, they'll do anything to help anybody. Big sponsors of Boys and Girls Club, and anytime they ask me to do something, I'm happy to do it, because I know they do 10 times what I do.
Oh, no question. And they've been involved with all the things that we get involved with, everything from NFL alumni to Patriots alumni, to you pick up the phone and say, and it kind of goes versa versa too. I know we've both spoken in front of their sales groups and their service groups and stuff, and so it's been a very symbiotic relationship. So Dan Marr, thanks for jumping in. John Andreoli, thanks for jumping in. Tim, thanks for being there, buddy. And
my pleasure.
All right.
Say hello to Zabe and Nelly for me.
Oh, I sure will. You might have to tune that in, and you can. We might slide you in on the Zoom side of that thing too.
Ask Zabel about the time he showed up late for practice and he told the coach, "Don't pay the ransom, we've escaped."
They wrapped each other in gauze to make it look like they'd been kidnapped. Oh well. Anyway, Tim, it's been enjoyable. Thank you very much, buddy.
My pleasure.
All right.